Hello, everyone, and welcome to this stream. My name is Sayam Pathak, and I'm a CNCF ambassador. If you are new to the channel, then make sure you subscribe. And there are two places it is running live: one on YouTube and another one on Twitch. So if you are on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and if you are on Twitch, then please do a follow. It keeps me motivated to do more and more because it takes time for organizing these, creating these, and obviously when we are learning, again it takes time, but again, anything for the community. So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining in. So today we'll be discussing about Rancher Desktop, very interesting projects. So two of the projects, Rancher Desktop and Kim, both are very new, and both are was built recently by Rancher and Suse team. They have actually been building a lot of products, and this particular stream is a part of Rancher Suse Super Stream series that I'm doing. So this is the third video. We have already done one on Cube Warden and Epinio. Both have been very successful and people have loved those. And this one is Rancher Desktop and Kim, and I have heard like people have been super interested in learning about the potential and the use cases, how they can use, how it will be helpful for them. So today I'm very excited to have Matt on the show. So Matt works at Suse, and he has all the experience with Rancher Desktop and Kim. He'll be showcasing, he'll be telling first about what they both are. We'll be going through like all the features they have, then the demos, and also like how you people get involved, because that is important. These projects are super new, they have a great potential, and you have a very good chance of getting involved early on and shaping up the project, which is which you get very less. But these days, with open source and with the openness that Rancher and Suse they come with very early on the stage in the R&D phase, and then you people can get involved easily and shape up the project. So welcome, Matt. I'll give you a chance for your quick introduction. Just before that, I want to cover the swag giveaway part, which is very important. So there is a swag giveaway as well. And again, thank you to the Suse team for doing that. So we have 5 swag giveaways that we'll be doing in the end of the stream. So make sure you share the stream, talk on Twitter about what are you learning from it, and fill out this form. So I have posted the link in the chat of both Twitch and YouTube. So make sure you fill the form, because that is the only way you will be getting in the swag giveaway. So we'll be choosing them in the end. So welcome, Matt. Please introduce yourself to the community.
Hi, my name's Matt Farina. I'm one of the engineers over at SUSE. I'm the person who actually started writing the software for Rancher Desktop that I'm going to talk about today. And we integrated Kim in, and so I get to demo that as well. I've been around the CNCF community for a while. Actually, I remember when the CNCF was created. I've been a Kubernetes SIG chair, Helm maintainer, Artifact Hub maintainer, work on a lot of the things in the open source space. So I'm really excited to be here to get to talk about one of the many new projects that SUSE Rancher has been working on, because we've been doing so many new things that we're just excited to talk about this stuff now. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. So really glad to have you. You have been in this cloud native space for a long time. You have seen it grown, all the projects coming in, all the projects, moving in the cloud native way, the Kubernetes way, and solving specific problems. And Rancher and Suse have been those innovative organizations that always, focus on specific problems and trying to solve them with all open source tools, which is just amazing. So really glad. And today we'll be discussing again on Rancher Desktop and Kim. So maybe we can start first with Rancher Desktop, and let's get started with Rancher Desktop, I think.
Sure. I've got some slides, so I'm going to go ahead and I'll share my screen. And
so we have fancy slides.
So I have slides, and then we'll get into a demo, and we can show you what we've got. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. So Rancher Desktop. Rancher Desktop, well, I guess I should start by saying Rancher Desktop, it's an open source Kubernetes and container management desktop application, right? And so when I like to talk about this, I like to start by asking, what does Kubernetes on the desktop mean to folks? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to me? And when we first started looking into this, this was one of the questions that I had to ask. And one of the first things that came to mind was I thought of Kind. Kind is Kubernetes and Docker. And this is what many people use on their desktop systems to do testing, to do development, to interact with Kubernetes, even for those who are building Kubernetes. It was designed with testing Kubernetes itself in mind. It wasn't designed for app development or using in your desktop or that kind of thing. But because there was a need, many people started using this for that in CI and other places. In fact, I use it in continuous integration systems today. Maybe you think about Minikube. Minikube is the longest active Kubernetes local development tool that I'm aware of. There were some that came before, but Minikube kind of took to dominate. And Minikube by default uses Docker to run things in, just like Kind does, because it's Kubernetes in Docker. But you can also use virtual machines for that. But that's another tool that people will use. Or maybe you think of K3S and K3D, something else that's come out of Rancher. K3S did. K3D was part of the community. And you might notice we have a Docker theme going on here. With K3D, you're running K3S in Docker. You're also noticing probably a terminal theme because all of these things so far have been terminal related. So there's this kind of Docker and terminal thing going on when it comes to your desktop. And we realize that there's a lot of people who don't want to be in terminals. They want, having to remember the commands because they want to focus on their applications. And of course, then you have Docker Desktop. And Docker Desktop has been an amazing tool. I've used it for years, but it's not open source. And it is coupled to Docker itself. These days you have to pay for a service if you don't want upgrades. You're stuck with the Kubernetes version that they ship. And this is where a lot of folks will go for their desktop setup, right? And this is where you even get into kind of the GUI app if you want to get outside of the terminal. If you want to deal with Kubernetes and container management, it's kind of the go-to tool. But unfortunately, it's not open source, and there's some other problems with it. One of the biggest that we found is that people use a lot of different Kubernetes versions in production and in development. The latest version of Kubernetes isn't it. In fact, 1.21 is out. But if you go to the public clouds, most of them are running 1.19 as their latest version. It's a couple of minor versions old, and it's the oldest of the Kubernetes supported versions. So it's a supported version, but it's the oldest of them. And you'll see many older versions of Kubernetes in use. I know people using 1.16, 1.17, 1.18, and different patch versions. They may not be up on the latest patch version and they want to change it. The Kubernetes versions that are out there are as fragmented as Android versions, I like to say. They're all over the place. And in minor versions and even patch versions, there can be changes that are relevant to running your workloads. And so I might test something in Kubernetes 1.20 or 1.21, go to run it in Kubernetes 1.18, and things don't work quite the same because there were differences in the API structures or something else going on. I still remember a couple of years ago when I got bit by running a version of Kubernetes where cron jobs didn't run quite the same. There was a bug in there. And it worked fine in my local environment, but that minor Kubernetes version difference from production actually made a difference. And so this is a problem when your local environment can't match. And so maybe you drop down to Minikube or Kind, but then you don't have the GUI experience. And so what we found was there were no great open source Kubernetes desktop applications. And of course, along with Kubernetes, you want to have container management as well. The last version of something that was open source and a GUI on something may have been kubesolo. This was a project back when Koros had yet to be bought by Red Hat before Red Hat was bought by IBM. And it was a project that let you run Kubernetes as a desktop app. And you could do Kubernetes and container management and those things. But the project, unfortunately, was deprecated. And so there's inspiration from the past, but there wasn't anything great now. And so that's where Rancher Desktop came in. Rancher Desktop, what is it? It is Kubernetes and container management, and it runs on Windows and Mac. And the D logo here, that's Containerd, which is the engine that we end up using for our container management. And so it's a desktop application. And while today I'm going to demo on Mac, when I mean desktop application on Windows, here is the preferences screen. It is a desktop app with a GUI and things of that nature. And this is just a quick screenshot that shows you the general settings and some of the other settings that you can get to and some of the status. I took this while Kubernetes was starting and it's showing you what's going on here. But this is the preferences screen from Windows because it's a Windows and Mac desktop app. And these are kind of our design goals. This is the one slide that I borrowed from our product management team on where we want to go with Rancher Desktop, our design goals, right? We want you to be able to choose your version of Kubernetes, and I'll show you that. We're going to leverage upstream projects, be completely open source. This is open source. It's up on GitHub. I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But we're not going the proprietary route. We want everything to be open. So that way people from the community can help us fix bugs or come up with features or work on the source as they want to or need to. We want to make sure everything's a seamless upgrade, easy installation, and it's Kubernetes native. One of the things you'll find with Docker, and I appreciate it, is you've got great container management. But Kubernetes came on as the second thing running in Docker. We're kind of inverting that because at SUSE Rancher, we do a lot of Kubernetes and Kubernetes comes first. So the way we do it is we're putting Kubernetes first and the container management flows into that. And so you can do lots of container things, but it is built around Kubernetes. And some of what I'll demo here in a minute will touch on how that's a little bit different and why we like it that way. All right, so this slide actually gets into the architecture of the desktop application because it runs on Mac and Windows. And you'll see inside of Rancher Desktop, and Rancher Desktop is an Electron app. That's what let us prototype it very quickly, let me get going very easily while still being able to build something for Mac and Windows. And we have Kim bundled with it, kubectl and Helm. They're all bundled with it as tools you'll get, and I'll show how that works. And on Mac, we spin up a virtual machine using the hypervisor framework. Today, we're using HyperKit. We're actually looking at using a different project called Lima to replace HyperKit as our engine to help us with the hypervisor framework. And then we run Containerd and K3s for our Kubernetes distribution in there. On Windows, we took a different route because not all versions of Windows will let you run will let you create virtual machines. But every version of Windows 10, every modern version can run the Windows subsystem for Linux and specifically version 2. So we create a distro in there and we bring up Containerd and K3s using WSL. And so each system runs a little bit differently, but it's able to take on that underlying functionality in the operating system. So for example, if you're on Windows 10 Home, you can use this. You don't need the professional version that lets you manage virtual machines, and it works just out of the box today. And so this is kind of the top level architecture for how that stuff works. We do have the website, rancherdesktop.io, where you can learn more about all of this stuff and even get into diagrams and how it works and read docs. The other project that we have here, and I'll touch on, is KIM, which is Kubernetes Image Manager. If you're going to deal with Kubernetes, and we talk about Kubernetes a lot, in a lot of your developer cases, you'll probably want to build images, test those images, and work on those images. And Kubernetes doesn't provide that capability to build images on the fly and to do things in the cluster and work that way. So that's where KIM comes in. It's a project with a familiar user experience. In fact, I was talking with some folks who've actually renamed or created a link from KIM to Docker, and then there are tools that call Docker build and things like that called KIM build, and they were able to still functionally work because KIM has that same traditional Docker command line UX with the same command, same functionality. There are a number of tools that do this now, and KIM is one of those. And KIM works with Containerd and BuildKit in order to build your images. It's specifically targeting K3s though. So realize if you try to use it with something else, it's not really going to work. It's designed for K3s. And since that's what we're using, it works with Rancher Desktop. Now, here's a little bit about how KIM works, right? You have KIM on Mac or Windows or Linux. In our case, with Rancher Desktop, this is where we're at. And then in your Kubernetes cluster, KIM starts up a daemon set as a pod. And inside there, you've got BuildKit and you've got an agent. And Kim, the CLI, communicates with those. And BuildKit is actually the tool that does the building. And it's running inside the Kubernetes cluster and working with Containerd inside of Kubernetes to make all of this work. And so if you do something like run Kim build, and this will build something from, say, a Docker file. It actually communicates with the daemon set running in Kubernetes and Containerd underneath, and that image becomes available to Containerd. Whether or not Kubernetes goes away or something else, or the daemon set goes away, something happens with Kim, Containerd now holds that image. Now, Kim does let you do more than building. You can push images, you can pull images, that familiar UX, but this is kind of how it works. It becomes available in Containerd, and that's really powerful that it's instantly available there, because you don't have to push it and pull it in Kubernetes to use it. Now, if you're using Kim with a cluster, one of the things you'll find here is that Kim only puts the daemon set on nodes that have a role of builder. If a node doesn't have a role of builder, and this lets you control where Kim and where the building happens in the Containerd and how you want it. In Rancher Desktop, we only use it with a single node at the moment, and so we don't worry too much about that, but it only does it in builder roles. And so if you go to build something, that container image where I said it's available to Kubernetes Force and Rancher Desktop, in this case, when it's built, it's only available to that Containerd where it was built, right? So if you've got many nodes and you've got more than one that's a builder, it'll only be in that Containerd. Kim hasn't yet worked out how to share it with the other Containerd in the cluster. That may be a feature that's coming, but it is one of those things to be aware of if you're using multi-node K3s, is it only shows up in certain Containerd. And so you would have to still push it and pull it in those environments. So let's go look at a demo actually get into. Oh, yeah.
Just before that, so I think that's really interesting. We have some very good comments as well, because people are finding it a lot of interesting. So just to recap and understand how I'm able to, grasp it from whatever you have told about Rancher Desktop and Kim is, so Rancher Desktop is basically a desktop application that you can install on maybe your Mac or Windows, and it will be using its one of the layers like HyperKit for, I think, Mac, and the Linux v2 for Windows. And obviously it is it has the Containerd and K3s based, so it will be having the Containerd and K3s. And yes, it is bundled with Kim that you can use for building and building, pushing, pulling all the images, and the kubectl and helm command to interact. So basically you can select any Kubernetes version, you can build the application, you can test the application across different Kubernetes versions, and all these things. So I think that's pretty neat. And you also have like the Kim is available, so you can actually build and push the images with that as well. And Kim, on the other hand, is a tool that lets you build the images, and it right as of now it does on a kind of a single node. So in a multi-cluster environment, you have to take care of those things. Like, it will be available for Containerd. So if you push the image, basically if you build the image, then it will be running a daemon set, and that daemon set will be having your basically the build kit, and it will be then creating the image and handing that over to Containerd of that particular node, where it actually in which pod it actually ran. So it will be handling that to Containerd. So even if your Kim fails or it crashes or things like that, or even if the daemon set pod crashes, the image still be available for the Containerd to be used. So I think that's pretty interesting. And I think that's what was the kind of brief summary of what Matt has told. Yeah, really excited to see the demo, because I think this sounds really interesting because of all the history that you have told regarding the tools that have been there till now as desktop tools for running your Kubernetes and managing from your laptop.
Yeah. All right. So I'll go and get in to share my screen here of this. Now, if you come over to Kim, or I'm sorry, to Rancher Desktop, what you'll notice is there's the Rancher Desktop logo at the top of your screen. If you're on Windows, it's in the bottom right corner where you have all the other applications going. And so if I close this, I can come up here and go right into Preferences. You also have your Kubernetes contexts. So if you have more than one cluster, you can easily switch. But when you start up Rancher Desktop, it sets it to Rancher Desktop. So if we go into preferences, you'll see it tells you the version, it'll tell you the homepage and issues. If you want to get involved, or there's the Rancher user Slack where you can come chat with us, we point you there. So even if the links that I share later, you forget them, if you install Rancher Desktop, you can find out how to come get involved right there. Kubernetes settings. Now you'll see here I'm running Kubernetes 1.19.11, the amount of memory and CPUs. On Windows, you won't see the memory and CPUs because that's controlled by WSL. And you also see things like these supporting utilities. So you'll see I've got kubectl, Helm, and Kim. And if I uncheck any of these, then those are taken out of my path. They're not available to me to use. And if there's some reason it can't link them in, it'll tell me why. On Windows, it's happened a little differently because they're automatically shadowed into your path. So if you install something yourself, that would be used instead. If not, these are done, but it happens a little differently on Mac here. And you'll see these utilities are in here. And so this is where you can kind of choose your version and make those setting changes. And I'll demonstrate that in just a minute. But first, I thought it would be interesting to look at what does something like this look like. And so you'll see here a terminal window. And in fact, I'll make it a little bigger. And here we have Kuborden. You brought this in the other day, and you had Kuborden, and he demonstrated it. And so let's look at what it would be like to build Kuborden. And here I've just cloned the repository. You can actually see here's the source code for the Kuborden controller. And this is just kind of, I could swap this out for Docker or a different tool, but it's that same familiar UX. And I'll go ahead and just do Kim build. Now, what it's doing here, or what it did very quickly, was it actually took that Docker file and it resolved it. It built the application, copied things around, and did it. And now it's available inside of Kim. And so it built it, and this looks like the familiar maybe output because it's build kit that generated this output that you see in all the tools that work like this. And so being build kit based, that's where this happened. And if we look at the Docker file, you'll see the Docker file has a builder step with Golang 1.15, and it copies and it builds and it does all that work with Seago. And so it did all of those steps that you would expect to see, right? And so those same kind of Docker workflows here, they just work. And then we can even get to be something more interesting here. So I've got an application running here, and you can see I've got it running over here. And this is a demo that Darren Shepard did for something up on YouTube, and I just grabbed it. And so I've got a new version of this, and so we'll go ahead and we'll build it. Make this a little bigger, and we can go and do. We'll build it for Linux because it's going to run inside Linux. And so now that I've altered the source, I rebuild the binary, and we'll do. And now I'm incrementing to a new version, and you'll see the tag for it here. And we'll go ahead and we'll build it. Now it's built the new version of the image. And if I run Kim images, I can actually see I've got this new version here. That version wasn't there before. This is the version that was there. And now there's the new version, new hash. It's available inside Kim, and Kim images, just like Docker, you can view all the images you have. And then if I come over to here, we'll go ahead, we'll do Helm upgrade, and I had it as a different name. And we'll do it to the new image tag. And so now Helm is upgrading because I was in a current directory that has a Helm chart, and we upgraded, and we can do Helm, and we can see it's running in version 2. And I just did this newest revision. And so now we'll go to export, which is going to be here somewhere. There we go. And so then I'll come back over to here, and we can refresh. We never pushed or pulled it. And there's the new images up. And so that's just one of those ways where you can iterate on charts, or you can iterate on images, build them, test them, try them, without having to push or pull anything. Now, of course, you can push or pull those. Now, another thing you can see here is everything works just fine with Helm. And so we'll do Helm, install, we'll call it WP WordPress. And so we'll go install just an existing upstream chart, and we'll use Helm install to do that. And it's there. And so if I do Helm ls, bring this up a little, you can see it's been installed. And if we do, we'll look at all the pods that I have in my, all the pods in my default namespace. You'll see the pods are there. They're starting up. It pulls them down. It runs them. Everything works just fine with Helm. And so you can see a lot of the tools that you're going to use are able to work with, create images, build images, work with those images, install charts. You can just use kubectl to apply something and create things. All of these workflows work, and instead of Docker, you use Kim, and otherwise you just have Kubernetes available on your local system. Now that I have this stuff running, let me make sure the pods are up. We'll give it a second for the WordPress pod to come up. Well, even with that, if we come back over here, you'll see different versions of Kubernetes. And so I think it's useful to look at what happens when you do things. And so we'll go ahead and I'll kill my port forward and come over here, and we'll upgrade Kubernetes. And we'll say, I'm going to upgrade to 121.2. And so I'll choose this. It's letting me know that it's going to change versions, and it's going to upgrade Kubernetes. So rather than destroy it or wipe anything out, it's going to upgrade it. And so now it's going to try to download it if it doesn't have it, and it shut down Kubernetes, and now it's starting up. And down here in the lower left-hand corner of the settings, it told you it was starting. And it does take a minute to start everything up. Let's see. If you do this, you'll see some things are still coming up online, but you'll see everything is back up and running in the new version of Kubernetes. And it happened really quickly because no VM had to be shut down. K3s just had to be upgraded. And I'd already downloaded that version. And so if we go to, should work, export, I can come look at my app, export it, and it should be running in there. And if I refresh, it comes up. And I now just tested what it's like to have an application be running in one version of Kubernetes, change the version to a newer version and test it across an upgrade, see Kubernetes come up with that application and see what happens. And so I didn't just test it in a specific version of Kubernetes. I now just tested upgrading Kubernetes under my application and seeing what happened. And that's one of those scenarios we really wanted to tackle here. Now, unfortunately, downgrading Kubernetes doesn't work so well because Kubernetes itself can be upgraded. But if I wanted to downgrade, it doesn't work so well. So I'm going to grab just a random older version of Kubernetes, 1.18.18, and we're going to go change this. And it warns me that Kubernetes is going to be reset because you can't downgrade Kubernetes with newer resources. It just doesn't work that way. So we end up wiping everything out, but we warn you. You click on OK. Now, because I haven't run this version of Kubernetes before, it needs to download it. It's doing that now. You can see it happening. It'll let you know how much it's got left to do. And that's because when we ship Rancher Desktop, we don't ship every version of Kubernetes. We don't ship Kubernetes. When you choose a version to install, if you don't have that cached locally, we go ahead and download it at that point. So that way you can pick your version and you don't have to have every version out there. And so it's downloading it. It's almost done. It doesn't take too long. This is K3s pulling down any of the versions of K3s that are available. And so it finished downloading it. And now it's going to go ahead and start it. Now I did have that port forward going, and because it's starting the new version of Kubernetes, it lost connection to the pod because the pod's gone. And it's starting up Kubernetes. And this should just take a moment. And now we've got a clean version of Kubernetes running. And so if I look at kubectl version, you'll see I am running that version of 1.18.18 that I had selected. But you'll also notice, and K for me is just an association to kubectl is an alias. You'll see now those applications I had deployed into there are gone. They're no longer there. But those images, let's see. Now you see a little problem here. Is the builder up yet? It took a moment for the builder to come up. The daemon set that I talked about before, it hadn't quite started when I first ran Kim images, and so it gave me an error. But you'll see those images that I had built before, they're still there. because containerd hadn't been wiped out. None of that had happened. So everything was still available to be used. In fact, another feature in here, right, is maybe I'm working in the same version of Kubernetes and I want to just wipe everything out. So start with a clean slate. I can hit reset Kubernetes. And what this is going to do, stop Kubernetes, wipe it out, and restart it. And it's doing that now. So it stops Kubernetes. And it's going to start everything back up here in just a moment. Now you'll see the downloading pop up. It checks to see if it's already got it. So it says that every time if it already has it. Now it's starting Kubernetes up. And it's thinking. And so while it's doing that, there's a couple other options here on the left that I'll talk about briefly while it's starting. One of them is images. And this is a GUI that lets you pull images, see your images, remove your images, that lets you do the same things that the Kim command line tool will do. It's a UI around that. And then the one above it, port forwarding, lets you set up port forwarding for the services you have in a cluster. It's still booting up the services, so you don't see anything there. Actually, I don't have anything because I reset it. So you see the builder, and you can port forward to things that are available. Kim Images will show you the images available, lets you do things such as delete the image or push the image, that kind of thing. And so that's what these things will functionally do. And so now we're over here. And if we run Kim Images again, it's still starting. I'm doing it very quickly. And we'll see the builder only has one of two, so it's not quite ready. Now it's ready. And you'll see the images are gone because when I reset Kubernetes, it actually reset the entire environment. Now, this is one of those things that we're going to probably end up changing here in the near future to let you reset Kubernetes without wiping out all of your images. As we iterate through this, it's alpha software. It's one of those things. So right now it'll wipe out your images, but in a future revision here, you'll have the option between wiping out Kubernetes and wiping out all of your images. And so you have that. And then we also have the troubleshooting section, which gives you a factory reset. And the factory reset wipes out everything, all the caches, everything you've got. In case something gets into a truly broken state, factory reset lets you get out of it by going completely fresh, basically wiping out the application's data. And so that's kind of my brief, quick overview of Rancher Desktop on this. And so I'll come back over here. I do have a little more to talk about where we're going with Rancher Desktop. I didn't know if there's any questions or anything else I should answer with regard to this from the demo.
Yeah, so there are a couple of questions, and first of all, it is amazing demo because I really liked how you can test out the same application across different Kubernetes versions without even having to install them manually or do some of the things, because you just select from the drop down which next Kubernetes version you want to test if you want to upgrade maybe in your actual environment. So you can actually test it out on Rancher Desktop, and it will easily move your pods. And also the thing that even if you have a new Kubernetes version or you downgrade the Kubernetes version, your pods might not be there, but your images still be there because the containerd itself is there. So all these images stays. And for the troubleshooting, you have that factory reset, and even for the port forwarding is very handy. So I think this testing of images across different Kubernetes version via Rancher Desktop and building the images directly using Kim and running them on your applications on the Kubernetes cluster is really cool. So I think that definitely poses a very strong use case for using Rancher Desktop. And there are a couple of questions. This is a kind of statement. Rancher Desktop reminds me of Docker Desktop in a way. It can orchestrate spinning a local Kubernetes cluster for your local testing purpose. Yes. And then, does Rancher Desktop currently supports KVM only, or it can support other hypervisors as well?
So Rancher Desktop is using WSL on Windows, and that uses Hyper-V. So WSL on Windows creates its own virtual machine, and inside of there, each one of the distros is still inside of the one virtual machine. It's almost like containerizing them. And that system virtual machine uses a certain number of cores and RAM, and it's adjustable, and there's a certain amount of automation around how many resources it uses. But with WSL v2, it is a virtual machine over there, and it's Hyper-V based. We're not interacting with that. On the on the Mac side, it's using HyperKit under the hood. And we're using HyperKit, and that uses the hypervisor framework. Now we are in the process of switching to using QEMU in order to, or we're looking at a QEMU based system in order to manage those things, because it's going to let us do things with Apple Silicon. So one of the things we don't have support for quite yet is Apple Silicon, and we're working on that. It works on the Intel-based Macs, and we're working on Apple Silicon. And a QEMU-based system will help us go between the architectures a little bit better. And so we're investing in that right now. But it's actually just using the built-in things that are available on Mac and Windows rather than going to the layer below at the moment. And QEMU is our Mac-based system going forward. And if we get into a Linux version of this, which is something that's open to discussion at the moment, it'll probably be QEMU-based, because that'll let us have some consistency in the technology.
Yeah, there was actually one question like, does it support the latest macOS M1? I think you already answered that.
It's a high priority for us to get there, but we knew most people had the Intel Macs, and getting a basic system running under that was easier. Right now, one of the things we're working on is how do we make it work with the two architectures, and maybe even be able to cross-build, right? On the M1, you're going to want to run the AMD 64-based architecture containers. How do we make that cross work and make it performant, as well as having it running in both environments? And so we've been running experiments, and that's led us to looking at a new backend for Mac.
Interesting. And one more question from Haivu. Will this new Rancher desktop installation be conflicting with the existing Docker desktop already running on macOS?
No, it should not conflict between the two. I don't know about running them both at the exact same time for system resources and things like that, but you should still be able to run them both. If you're running K3s using K3D inside of Docker at the same time you're running this, I think there's some conflicts there. Now, I'm not running Docker Desktop on this system. Actually, I, at one point, had to reinstall the operating system on the computer I'm demoing on. And I never reinstalled Docker Desktop because I'm able to do everything that I need to using Rancher Desktop now. But there are people who have them both installed and are able to use them both effectively.
Cool. So before we move on to the next thing, I just want to reiterate one that we have swag giveaway. So please enter the form. I'm just posting the link again. So if you have joined maybe in the middle and not at the beginning, so there's a swag giveaway which we'll do in the end. So make sure you fill the form and we'll pick the winners.
All right. So what I thought I'd talk about next for a moment is just kind of where this is going and how people could get involved.
Awesome.
And the easiest thing to say is to get involved. These projects are both completely open source and they're up on GitHub, right? They're in slightly different locations because they're two separate projects. You can use Kim without Rancher Desktop, but we happen to bundle it in Rancher Desktop in order to make everything functionally work well. But they're both completely open source. All work on these happens up on GitHub, right? The issues, pull requests, the workflows, everything's up there. So that way, just like all of the other SUSE Rancher projects, somebody can come get involved. If you find a bug, and we know there are bugs out there, you can file an issue. You can follow along to see how it gets scheduled to be worked on, because one of the things we are trying to do is address bugs that people have or issues they have in every release, and try to, to get involved there. And if you want to create a pull request against this, if you want to learn how to set up a development environment, how to work on these, that information is there. For example, in Rancher Desktop, if you're on Windows or on Mac, if you want to learn how to set up a development environment to work on it yourself, we have that. In fact, on Windows, we even have a script you can run, which will download and install all the developer tools. I'm a longtime Mac user and a Linux user, and I found that getting some of those tools installed on Windows wasn't necessarily intuitive. The right versions of build tools and things like that. And so we have a script you can run in PowerShell that will install those for you, so it's easy to get up and running. Otherwise, we do have directions on how to build those environments, because we do want contributors who can get involved, because we know we're not going to be able to catch every bug or fix every bug, or we're not going to come up with every great idea that can be in these. And we may not get to them in the order of creating the pull request that somebody really wants to. But if somebody wants to get involved and contribute, we've made that very possible, because we want contributions. So that's one of the first things, is they really are completely open source, and you can get involved, and we're excited for everybody who gets involved. The next thing is, on Rancher Desktop, to zoom in there, we do have a project, and that's where we do our planning. And every time we cut a release, because we use milestones for planning a milestone. So there's the 0.4.0 milestone, which is our next planned milestone. You can see the work that's planned to go in it. If you've got something you'd like to be added, a bug or something like that, it's easy to discuss then, because here's what we're going for. And when a milestone is done, then we clear out the done column in our project board. But we actually do project boards. Here's what people have in progress. Here's what's up for review and the pull requests. And then you can see the done column, which gets cleared out. And so we do have a flow to our releases, and our process for what goes into a release, it's all very open, because we want people to be able to see transparently, here's what we're working on. And you'll see in every planned release some bugs people found, and those are kinds of things that we're trying to get into the next release. And we do leave ourselves room to modify this. It's not a hard release. So if somebody comes along and has a bug, all right, if it's something that should get in, we're going to try and slide it into a release, because we do want to fix things. But our process, it's not just the software that's open as we work on Rancher Desktop, it's the process around development, because there are several developers working on different parts, and we want people to be able to see into, how are we building this? When are things going to come out? You want to know when 0.4.0 is going to come out? You can kind of see what the planning is, where it's on the board, to try to gauge how far along into that we are, because we have an open process as well. And then I was just going to say, thanks. If you want to engage with us more, obviously I showed the GitHub stuff, but we are also in the Rancher user Slack. There's Slack rooms, and you can come chat with us, talk with us, grab the developers, ask questions, point out issues, look for support. Before you file an issue, you may say, is this normal? And you can come into Slack and find us. There are rooms in the Slack for both Kim and Rancher Desktop, so you can discuss with people on those specific topics. But again, we're very, very open on all of this. And so this is kind of what I had to present, and the rest I'm happy to entertain questions.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I think you covered the contribution part in detail, and obviously you have tons of experience in cloud native and other projects as well. You have been maintaining them, so that's why the process looks so cool and so streamlined and so open, because you have that sort of experience. So like you have seen, can you go to the previous slide? Yeah, so like you can see, the projects are pretty open. You have the milestone set, and you have the releases set, but still, as you create the issues, and you might be working, some critical bugs come, they can also be a part of these these milestones. And yes, like I said initially as well, these projects that Rancher and SUSE have been working on, all the open source projects, they are very new. They really want the community contributions and the feedback. So feedback is very important. That's when we will be able to create the issues. We'll be able to see what all things it can do, which obviously this stream covers. So we have seen how Rancher Desktop works, what are the benefits of it, how you can use that, how Kim works, how Kim is integrated in the Rancher Desktop, and how you can utilize that. You can change different versions and all those things. things. So we have seen that the contribution part, you can contribute. Obviously, you can contribute to the docs, you can contribute to the code contribution, you can build the projects, test them out locally. Very fair and simple and detailed process is there. So make sure try that out. And on Rancher Slack, each of the project is having their own specific channels where you can reach out to the maintainers, tell them what thing is working, what thing is not working, what thing is very neat, what thing is awesome, what thing doesn't look so awesome, and what you actually need it so that you can completely rely on those tools. Yes, I think that's what the community contributions, that's where the community contribution will matter a lot. And definitely try Rancher Desktop and Kim. I think they are super easy. Maybe you can write a short blog how it works on different, on your platforms. And yes, help them test out on the Mac M1s, because obviously that would need a lot of testing and a lot of thought process on cross building, cross compiling some of the things. So they would need some of the beta folks for that as well, so that you people can test that out. So I think this is the right time to get involved in some of the cool tech that is coming out by, from Rancher and SUSE, because they have been investing time. So now I think since they are talking it, and there are use cases attached to all these projects, so I think we can do the community part from our end, and we can get involved early on and shape up the project in a way it should be. So the vision looks good. I think it has kind of a potential, because none of the projects, just as in the beginning there were comparisons of different toolings, so there was a need, and Rancher Desktop is trying to fill that gaps which are right out there. So I think that's pretty much makes sense. So yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. We have a few minutes left before we do the swag giveaway.
Yeah, and while questions are coming in, I'll say that one of the things we do want to do is you're showing off some of the other projects, like Opinio. And we are going to try, I don't know if they're in the backlog yet as far as issues, but we know we're going to try to make the integration with Rancher Desktop really easy. So, it would be great if you could click a button and have Opinio and then start doing local development with that if you wanted to use that as well. And so we're going to try to make, in an opt-in manner, integration with some of these other projects easy without forcing it on you, but making it optional, since they're all open source and people can get involved. One of the goals is to just try to make working with applications and building applications in Kubernetes and with containers easy. And so if you have ideas too, beyond what we've thought of in our experience, then please feel free to bring them up and open them up for discussion, because we're happy to talk about those ideas and to take them into account. Because our goal is to make you, who's out there building and working with containers and Kubernetes, successful. And so the only way we can do that well is by listening to what you have to say.
Yeah, I think that was a very good point, because Opinio works very well on K3s. We have seen that in just the previous stream, that how easy it was to set up on CO Kubernetes. And it was super simple. I think that does make sense to have it as an option to install maybe Opinio, maybe Rancher itself, so that you can test out all those locally. So yeah, there are these use cases that you can easily deploy Rancher with the click of a button, and you can see how it works. Then you can deploy Opinio and just deploy your application from app to URL just in a matter of minutes. So those are some of the extensible use cases that obviously the community will think more and come up with. So I think that's pretty interesting. Yeah, just want to point out one thing, that the webinar that was shown in the demo of Darren. So I was there. So basically, it was a CIVO webinar that we conducted, and it was super deep dive. I mean, I haven't seen the K3s internal Darren going so deep dive. So it was really cool. You should definitely check that out as well.
Yeah, and that wasn't my intent. I was really just looking for an easy video with Darren talking, and that was the first one that showed up in YouTube.
Awesome. So yeah, and so thank you all for joining in. And before we go, we'll do the swag giveaway as we always do. So let me export as the Excel. So I hope all of you have filled the forms. Awesome. So we have 30 responses, which is good. Okay, I have exported as Excel. So now I would request Matt to give me 5 random numbers between 1 to 30, and I'll be announcing the winners.
We'll say 7.
7. So 7 is a Lalit Soni. I hope I pronounce your name correct. So Lalit Soni. Second one.
13.
13. So it's Suman Chakraborty. 13. Suman. Okay, third one.
17.
17 is, okay, this is Nilima. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. Nilima Chavan. I'm posting the names as you have mentioned in the form. Fourth one.
22.
22. So it's Hai Wu. For 22, let me paste the name. The last one.
30.
30. So it's Santosh S. Cool. So I post the name. So congratulations to all the winners. So I'll be giving your email IDs and the contact information that you have filled in the form to the SUSE team, and they'll coordinate you so that you get a sweet chameleon plushie. So they'll get that shipped to you. And congratulations to the winner. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I was seeing some request of deep dive session on K3S. Sure, I think there was a kind of a session with Darren that I did on Fleet and K3 on Kubernetes distributions. Yeah, it was not sole deep dive on K3s, but definitely with the new, some of the features coming like traffic 2.x is there in the new K3s. So all those things we can definitely try out with the K3s backup restore using Lightstream. So I'll have a word with Darren and see if we can come up with a cool kind of live stream on K3s with some of the things that have not been discussed before, because there are a lot of things on K3s already. So I don't want Darren to be speaking about those. Rather than we'll talk about something maybe new and something cool with K3s. So definitely I'll keep that in mind and talk to him. So congratulations to all the winners, and thank you so much, Matt, for the awesome demos and explanation. You have been in the cloud native ecosystem, so you are the best at what you do. So you have nailed on and everything on Rancher Desktop and Kim. It was really amazing demo, and I hope the community likes both the product and they will start using them and provide you the feedback in the Slack channels. And please, the winners, request you to tweet out what you did learn from the stream, because that's also important. So you can just tweet out like you learned this from the stream, and some of the features that you liked from both of the products. So Matt, you want to say anything to the community?
No, just thank you for coming and hearing me talk about Rancher Desktop and Kim. And I hope you enjoy and they help make you successful.
Thank you. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel. That keeps me going. And again, this is just the Super Stream series, Rancher Super Stream series that is going on. And we already have done on Cube Warden, and we already have done on Epinio. And this was a third one on Rancher Desktop and Kim. And on Monday, which is 28th, we'll be doing OPNI, OPNI. So Sanjay will be doing that. So again, that is also another cool, interesting project that we'll be discussing on Monday. So be sure to join on Monday. And tomorrow is Kubernetes Community Days Bangalore event, free full day conference. So make sure you go to kcdblr.com and sign up for that. I'll be there as well. So my tomorrow day is also occupied. Anyways, hope you have a good learning. And thank you, Matt. So these are some of the thanks that people are giving. So I'll leave you all for the rest of your evening, morning, afternoon. Thank you, Matt, for joining in. Thank you all for tuning in. See you next time. Bye.